All right, you can have a seat.
Good morning, everyone. Bet y'all didn't expect to see that Grinch today. But he is here, and I'll give you guys a little more detail on that. If you guys have bulletins, you guys can pull out that little invitation that has the Grinch on it. So what we are planning on doing next week is we are having a Grinch experience. Every year, we started this last year, and we're going to make a tradition out of it. Every year during the holiday season, we are going to be doing some sort of Christmas movie experience. We've done things throughout the year called Real Truths, where we take a pop culture movie that's really trending and really popular, and then we watch it here, because if you are new to this building, this used to be an old movie theater, and we kind of kept where the screens were from the movie theaters. This beams right here, there used to be a wall right here, and there was actually 4 movie theaters. It was called the Petite 4 movie theater, and so we had 4 different theaters in here, and we're like, you know what? We're going to need these anyway for church. Why don't we just leave them exactly where they were for whatever movie theater that they were in, and let's do some cool things with this building that it used to be used for in the first place. And so we decided to start doing these Real Truths, but we decided last year that we thought it was a great hit last year with the idea of doing a Christmas experience, more than just a movie, but to try to bring the kids and the families into an environment that kind of transforms the whole building into whatever movie we're going to watch. So this Saturday, we are going to be watching it. Can you guys go to the slide that has this is for Sunday, but it's actually probably on your guys' little invites. I believe we start at 5 p.m. is when it starts. And so we're going to be here at 5 p.m. We're going to start the movie, and there's going to be hot chocolate, homemade hot chocolate. There's going to be tons of homemade cookies. There's going to be crafts for the kids afterwards. There's going to be opportunities for them to go into our classrooms and visit our classrooms and have different really cool quality crafts for them to take home. There's going to be coloring pages out here. We will have a Grinch on site. We'll have a Santa Claus on site. We're going to have all kinds of things for the whole family. And then that next day, Sunday, we're going to do a sermon, and we're going to insert clips from the movie and talk about how we can kind of find that parallel from the Grinch's story and Jesus' story. And that's what we've been doing these last few weeks as well, as we've been kind of leading up to seeing different things that the Grinch and the story of the Grinch kind of parallels in our relationship with Jesus. So we hope that you guys will take that flyer, take that date down and that time down, and then hand that off to somebody that you know that might benefit from coming to something like this. Whether it's a family member, a coworker, a classmate, whatever it may be. But we're really hoping to really pack the crowd for this event that we do, and it's completely free to our community. So please make sure that you guys are inviting for that. Now let's jump into the series that we've been kind of going through. We're talking about how to have a Grinch-free Christmas, or and some of the topics we've been talking about is how the gospel changed the Grinch, and it can change us as well. And last week we talked about the idea of how we can allow Jesus to help us in this area with our pasts. And we talked about how we have to grasp that Jesus came to help us, right, last week, and that we have to believe that Jesus has the power to help us, and then we have to commit to doing what Jesus asks of us to receive that help, that if he's actually going to help us with our past, kind of like how the Grinch needed help, we were going to need to have an awareness of what that is. And today, what we're going to be talking about is what stole your Christmas, right? Because the whole concept of the Grinch is that he stole Christmas, right? And he thought the impact it was going to have was going to be in his benefit, and it was going to kind of put the Who's in their place, and put them where they need to understand what they had not had, and that this was too much, and it was making him unhappy. So if he steals it, it's going to make him happy. And what we kind of find out is the parallel between the Grinch and us is that there have been things in our lives that have stole our Christmas. Because when you think about the Christmas season, and you think about if Jesus says in Scripture that, God is going to give us a new heart. He's not just going to restore it. He's not just going to heal it. He gives us a new heart as a Christian. Then why is it around the holiday season sometimes we can still feel like there's no joy? It doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, if you've surrendered your life to Christ or not. the holiday season sometimes makes us feel like we don't have that joy that we're supposed to. And so why is it, though, that December tends to be a time for people that there is a lot of hope and a lot of love, but sometimes it can bring also stress and bitterness and emptiness, overwhelmingness. There can be a numbness even. I think we learned something important from the movies of the Grinch is the reality is that the Grinch didn't really hate Christmas. Something stole his joy a long time before that, right? If you watch the movies and you see the outcome and the ending of the Grinch movies, you start to recognize it wasn't Christmas that stole his joy, it was something else in his past. That joy is not the indicator of the circumstance, but it's the situations that have led up to where the Grinch was today. And Jesus tells us the same exact spiritual truth. You see, in John 10:10, that's our theme verse for today. It says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly." You see, the Grinch misdiagnosed the problem, and so do we a lot of the times. We think it's about the Christmas. We think it's about the circumstance. We think it's about something that's the issue. But what actually stole the Grinch's joy and what actually steals our joy is an unhealed heart. That's the problem. And what we have to figure out today is how to diagnose that problem and how to identify that problem. You see, for some of us, we can look at our lives and say, man, there used to be a joy, and it's not there anymore. There used to be things in my life that were so happy and so, like I used to be a different kind of person, but I'm not that anymore. Where has my joy gone? My joy has been stolen. And God says it hasn't been stolen. Something's just hurt and hasn't healed yet. Because joy is something that God gives us, and He does not take it away. But our life circumstances and our hurts, and Satan is very, very tricky, and he uses things in our lives to hurt us. And that makes the joy seem it makes it seem impossible to find. It makes it seem like it's such a cloudy fog to navigate through our souls to find that piece of joy that's still in there. And so my goal today is to help us understand that there is a hope, and for everyone in the room to recognize you have joy in your heart right now. You have joy in your soul as a human being. God has given that to you. The question is, what is it going to take to find it? What is it going to take to restore it? What is it going to take to get it back? And that's a long process, but there's some things today that we're going to identify on how to get to that spot, to figuring out what it is that steals the joy, the lie that Satan whispers to us because of him stealing our joy, but ultimately the truth that Jesus offers us despite the lie and the thief. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So if you guys want to follow along with us, there is some things in your guys' bulletins, some notes that you guys can follow along with. But these verses aren't in your notes. These are some verses that I kind of jotted down just to kind of get this concept. So I'm going to kind of spitfire these out. But in 1 Peter 5:8, it talks about that your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. In 2 Corinthians 2, Paul talks about that we're not unaware of the devil's schemes. In Ephesians 6, it says, stand against the devil's schemes. In John 8:44, it says the enemy is a liar and the father of lies. Scripture makes it very clear that whenever Jesus says in John 10:10 that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, that is the character of Satan, that is his goal, is to get into our hearts, to get into our minds, and convince us of all of the things that we want to believe that makes joy not present. He cannot, that's the thing though, is he comes to take these things. He comes to steal, he comes to kill, he comes to hurt, but God has not given him the power to rip our joy away, right? God never says Satan has the ability to take our joy. He has the ability to put things in our life to hurt us, to make us feel and convince us that he has taken our joy. And our goal today is to identify what those might be in your life that help you understand this is why I don't feel joy. And if we can kind of walk through this, and maybe there's going to be some certain points today that you'll be able to circle and identify in your life. Most of these the Grinch had to deal with as well. But the enemy rarely works through these big, huge, dramatic attacks. It's not like these crazy life circumstances. It tends to be more slow and subtle and small cracks in the heart that tend to build up a bitterness and a hard heart. And so let's identify these types of thieves today that Jesus is kind of indicating that Satan will work through. All right, so let's jump in. This first one is painful past experiences. Joy can be stolen through painful past experiences. It doesn't matter what it is, who it is, but the Grinch in itself, his childhood rejection became essentially the filter through which he saw the world. You see, in the story of the Grinch, he was a young child, and if you whether you watch the live action or the new cartoon, in the live action, it kind of pans back to the two old ladies that took care of him. He makes that comment where he's like, "You're still alive," right? And he kind of makes a joke about how old they are and where they're at in life. But then it pans to the school, right, and how the kids would make fun of him, and he thought he liked a girl, and then he tried to shave, and he got made fun of, and that just kind of spiraled downhill, and then it flashes back to his present time, right? And you can kind of see through his eyes that he perceives the world because of the hurt he had from his past. And that's the same exact thing that Satan wants to do to us, is we've been hurt. For some of us in our past, there's been some things, whether it was in our childhood, whether it was in our relationships in elementary school and high school and college, whether it was a job or something like that. But what has happened is we perceive the world in a filter through what has hurt us through our past. We too many times use our past to recognize our present, and that fogs our present from the joy that's really surrounding our present because we're so focused on what's happened to us in the past. And many people so many times misinterpret their present because of their past, right? In this verse in Isaiah 43, it says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell in the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Do you not see it?" And Isaiah's trying to plead with God's people, saying, "Listen, you can't dwell on this. You can't let it define your life right now. You can't sit here and say, because of what happened to me, I am this today." A lot of times people make that comment. It's called a product of our environment, right? That I'm always going to be this way because of the way that I was raised, or I'm never going to be able to get out of this funk because of how I was born, or because of the circumstances I was born into, or because of the life that I lived, the poverty, the socioeconomic class, the race that I was born into, the demographic, whatever it may be. And we say, I am who I am because of the things that happened in my past, and I will never be anything else. That's past hurts. That's past circumstances, and so many times we define our right now because of those things. And Isaiah pleads with God's people. He says, you need to forget all of that. You need to press restart. You need to press something in your mind to circulate back to right now. Because if you let everything else from your past define your future, what's going to happen is those wounds are never going to truly be healed. And when wounds aren't healed, in time, they become weapons that hurt others. You see, your unhealed wounds, when you leave them open and you see life through Satan's filter and the things that have happened in your life, Satan will start to use those things to work against God's mission. And he will use you. And so whenever you want to talk about how bitter you are towards somebody and they can't see Christ in you because you're so upset because of the holidays, or you're so upset because work isn't going the way you want it to, but the reality is it's not going well because you never really treated with respect as a kid, and you were abused as a kid, and so now you abuse other people. You see what I'm saying here? Like, Satan uses our past to make our present something that's not reality, and because of that, it's now weaponized for the people that you grow up in a relationship with right now. And this is a huge tactic that Satan uses. And so maybe that's where it's at today that you're looking at it. You can start thinking, maybe you circle that one. It's like, this is definitely one of them. This is definitely a place that Satan tends to attack me because I've got a pretty bad past. And I've got an unhealed past. And there's something going on in my past that's not letting me see joy clearly in my present. Maybe it's painful past experiences. The next one, maybe it's disappointment and delayed hope. Satan uses disappointment and delayed hope quite often in our lives, right? Because maybe Christmas reminds you of what didn't happen, right? Or who isn't here anymore. Maybe Christmas reminds you, maybe it's hard to go to the holidays because there's a loved one that's not here anymore. Maybe they've passed away, or maybe they're just physically not here anymore. Or maybe Christmas reminds you of where you thought you'd be by now. You know what comes right after Christmas? New Year's, right? And every time we hit New Year's in the holiday season, we tend to look back at our year and think that we were going to do so much more in the year. And then we get caught in this idea that this was a disappointment of a year. This was a hard year. There's not a lot of things that I thought were going to happen that actually happened this year. And I thought I'd be so much better by now. Or I thought I'd be in a completely different space by now. Or I thought I'd have a different type of relationship or a different type of job or a different type of financial situation. And these things I start getting more and more disappointed by. And that hope that I feel like I can keep coming into, slowly and slowly it starts to disappear. In Proverbs, Solomon says this in Proverbs 13. It says, unrelenting disappointment leaves you heartsick. Man. But a sudden good break can turn life around. See, this disappointment, it just leaves you sick, right? Because you just want something to finally go in your favor, right? You just want to win, right? You just want something to happen, like you Bears fans in the room, right? You're hoping this is the year, right? Like you're like, maybe this is finally the year as a Bears football fan. Like we're actually doing good, and maybe it's not a fluke this year, right? Well, it's just like the Cowboys, man. It's just every year's our year until it's not, right? And we keep getting our hopes up. And we're like, maybe this year, maybe things are starting to look good, and maybe things are finally turning a leaf, and then they never do. And we're like, man, why does this keep happening to me? And you can even do that in a church setting, right? You can come to church every single Sunday. You can come into your small groups. You guys can be so closely connected. We can choose to be in complete relationship with community, do all the right things, and yet still not see the production that we thought we would have. And that hope can still be delayed because, see, that's the thing is God promises a lot of things, but He doesn't promise a timeline to us. He never says it's going to happen when and where you want it. And also some of the things that we promise or that we ask God for, He does not promise. Some of the things that we wish we had, when we say, God, I really hope to get a better job. God doesn't promise that, right? God doesn't deliver that. God, I really just want to have a better financial situation. Man, if you see the first century disciples, they were not living in luxury. God doesn't promise a lot of the things that we ask for, and so we start to convince ourselves that maybe God's not delivering. God doesn't promise healthy children. God doesn't promise children. God doesn't promise a spouse. God doesn't promise financial success. He doesn't promise all these different things that sometimes we feel like God is supposed to deliver on. And so what happens is Satan uses those schemes and says, God should give you those things. God's going to give you those things. And then the timeline keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And we start asking those questions of, is God going to deliver? Can He deliver? I don't think He's going to deliver. And we push hope farther and farther away, and Satan twists our mind that maybe God isn't the God that we think He is because He's not answering my prayers. He's not giving me what I want. He's not giving me what I think He's promised. And Satan loves to push the timeline for us to see how long we can be tolerant. He wants to see how long we can outlast the hardships. And He wants to see how far He can push the indicators of what really God is and what He can promise. But sometimes it's due to our naiveness that we don't really know what God is capable of promising, right? It's a weird way to say that, but like I said, God doesn't promise a lot of the earthly things that we ask for, but we feel like that's part of God's plan. And sometimes it's not part of his plan for you. God's plan is not universal, which kind of leads us into our next point. Because if it's his plan for you and it's not universal, another huge joy stealer is comparison and impossible expectations. When we choose to look at everybody else around us and say, I'm not like you, so I must be doing something wrong, this is the quickest way that Satan can steal our joy, because it's the most instantaneous way to see either gratification or disappointment. The Grinch saw that, right? The Grinch went around Whoville all the time, right? And he saw everybody, they lived a different way, they acted a different way, they had different things, and he immediately felt less than with all the Whos, right? He lived in a time and a place where he just felt he was less than. And a lot of us can feel that way as well whenever we scroll social media, right? Or we watch TV and we see things that we don't have, we see things that we don't get, we see things that aren't us but want us to be like them, and we start instantly comparing us to things that are either incredibly not accurate to compare ourselves to or completely impossible to have the same expectations to. You know, I was an athlete growing up, and literally watching any major league athlete, you know, in any profession, and trying to compare my life to their life, right? How am I supposed to compare my life to somebody who makes $20 million a year? Like, why don't I have the same things they have? Because I don't make $20 million a year, you know, but like we see all the things that they have and the things that they do and the things that they live in, and we try to start comparing things, and we're like, it's impossible to have the same expectations on what life is going to look like in these scenarios. And then we start getting sad because we don't have those things. There's also the emotional, relational side of this. For some of you guys that are a little older like me, you remember MySpace, all right? Anybody remember MySpace? The number one place of comparison, right? Let me explain to you young folks that don't have Facebooks and MySpaces back in the day. So MySpace was the bee's knees back in the day, right? It was the coolest place to be on. Every single day after school, you'd go home and you click on your MySpace, and it was like a Facebook page, but it was so much cooler, right? Because you had a background song. Every time you'd hop on to a MySpace, you click somebody's name, you go to their page. It was like their little home. And you'd have some kind of like cool, awesome background song that would start. And you know, I was in like an emo phase in high school, so I was listening to like Blink-182 or like Fall Out Boy or something like that was playing in my background. And some of you guys saw that weird photo that's been circulated with me, like flipping my hair to the side. Like I was in a little weird phase, okay, in high school, right? And so you start scrolling, and it was like your favorite interests, and you could have a couple different like blogs that you'd put on there. You had a little comment section. But what really stood out, anybody remember what the number one thing was that you went to go look for on a friend's MySpace? Top 8. The top friends, right? Because on a Facebook page, you had your little photo up in the corner, but right down to the right was your top friends. And you could only have 8. Everybody else got the boot, right? And so what would happen is you go to your friends page, and boom, you'd see 8 names. And I'll tell you what, man, I think those names switched more than, you know, people's Facebook statuses and everything today. It was like a day-to-day thing that you would be grading your friends and putting them, because on the Facebook, I don't think it had numbers by each place, but everyone knew the top left was number 1, right? Everybody knew it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's how your friends were ranked in high school or junior high or whatever age you were in, as you guys had a MySpace. And so as you had friends, you could clearly tell who had beef with who, or who had some drama, or who had a fallout, because you click on their MySpace and like, oh, why is Amy not number 1, but she's number 6 now, right? Where did Devin go? Why is he not on there anymore? What happened there? I don't know. Like, and you didn't have to talk to the people. You could start seeing how much was gone, right? But the funniest thing that happened, I think, a lot with MySpace was whenever somebody got into a relationship, right? Because if I'm a dude clearly my top eight's all dudes in high school. Like, it's just how it was, right? You had your bros there, right? Everybody was there. But once you got a girlfriend, she's got to go up there, right? She's got to go up there somewhere. But for the girlfriend, she doesn't go somewhere. There's only one place for her to have to go, right? It's that number one spot. But that caused so much drama in high school because literally some guys were like, man, we've been dating for a week. That's my childhood best friend. Like, he's definitely number one. And I don't know how many relationships ended because of people's rankings on MySpace top 8s. It happened all the time because they compared themselves so much to somebody else. And you get these overdramatic girls being like, why am I not your number one? Huh? Do you not love me? I'm like, no, we've been dating for a week. Like, we're in high school. Like, you're definitely not my number one. These are my childhood friends from my neighborhood that we've been playing sports and living. We've never had a sleepover. I sleep over at their house every weekend. How would I rank you number one in my life? We don't know each other that well, right? It's like, if I'm not your number one, then I'll never be your number one, so we're done. Like, I saw so many breakups happen in high school because of this idea, this ranking system that if the girl was not number one, then she was done with the dude. It was like almost an expectation that happened immediately, right? And I say all this because we do the same thing, right? We look at our lives and we compare ourselves to everyone around us. And it shows in so many different faces. Why am I not as close to these guys as they are with each other? Why am I not as close to God as He is? I must not be doing something right. I must not be doing something God wants me to do. I must not have joy in my life. And we compare our things to things that God says we should never compare ourselves to. Literally, look at what Paul says here in 2 Corinthians. He says, we don't dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they're not wise. You see, comparison steals joy faster than anything because we're doing the things that Paul is warning that non-Christians do. He's saying we as Christians, we don't dare to compare to anything because that's not wise. People who are thinking about the world and thinking about the comparisons, that's all that they do is sit here and say, oh, do I look like this girl? Do I act like this girl? Do I look like this guy? Do I have that same athletic talent as this guy? If I don't, that must mean he's better than me, or I need to do something to be as good as him or better than him. And we start feeding our insecurities and comparing to things that just don't make any sense. And Paul understood that. He says, listen, this is not wise. And so maybe that is an area for you. Do you compare yourself to others so much that it steals your joy because what you see is not what you like? Is that an issue in our hearts? The fourth one is busyness and exhaustion. So Jake, you're saying if I work too hard, it will rob my joy? 100%. It's that traditional image, right, of a man who works 60 hours a week and he comes home and he sits on the couch and grabs a beer and he has no time for his family, no time to talk with his wife. He's just so tired and he's just like, I've had a long day, babe. I need to sit here and watch TV for a little bit and I need to go to bed and I'll do it all again tomorrow. Busyness and the exhaustion of life can steal our joy when we cloud it too much with too many things. That's one of the things that the Grinch hated about Whoville during the Christmas season, right? He didn't even want to go down there during Christmas season because he's like, it's chaos down here. It's Black Friday every day in Whoville, at Christmas season. Like, everybody's running around all over the place just acting crazy and not stopping. He hated that concept because it was just chaos, right? And how many times do we wait for the holidays, right? Whenever it's like July and we're like, man, I can't wait for Christmas to get here. Anybody like that? Anybody like a summer depression because you're waiting for the holidays, the warm and fuzziness, the fires and the sitting around the fireplace and the holiday meals. But what it is in reality, once we get to it, is like nonstop shopping and non-stop party after holiday party, after work party, after family party, after presents, after whatever. And then we get through it and we're like, where did it go? Where did the holidays go? Like, literally, think about this. Like, in 2 weeks, it's going to be New Year's, right? Yeah, you guys are like, what? Like, how did that get here? I haven't even started school break yet. My school hasn't even started Christmas break yet, and we're already almost through it, right? And that's what happens is this busyness, it clouds our judgments and it clouds our thoughts, and it steals our joy because sometimes our schedules are so busy, it doesn't give our souls time to breathe. It doesn't give our soul a time to just rest and relax. And like David said here in Psalms 46, to be still. Be still and know that I am God. See, so do you cram your schedule with so many things, so much stuff, that you can't clearly even see joy when it's right in front of your face? You see, the thing about the Who's that run all over the place is everything that they were doing was for community, was for unity, was for the holiday season, but they got so caught up in the day-to-day mundane things to create it that they completely forgot what they were doing and why they were doing it in the first place, because they never had a chance to slow down to enjoy it. Sometimes, as Christians, it's important for us to slow down, to not necessarily have to go to every party, to not have to go to every single place, to not have to go to every single store. Your kids don't need just one more thing in their lives for their presents. They don't need one more paycheck to hit so they can have everything they need. They don't need all of this stuff. Our families don't need all of that stuff. What your families need, parents, is you. They need you present. They need you not busy every single day. My kids have caught the grunt of this the last few weeks. My life has been chaos over the last few weeks. And my kids have caught that. And it's one of the most gut-wrenching things I can think about is when my kids are like, Dad, you just seem busy all the time, right? Because one of the things that I wanted so desperately in my life was to break a cycle and not be what my dad was, which was not present. My dad wasn't present as a kid. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad wasn't in the home. My dad was never around. And maybe a hard truth that you men in the room are going to hear today is just because you're home doesn't make you any different than your dad's if you're not really present as well. Because you can be in the house and mentally not be there. And that's what I struggle with. I'm trying so hard to create an environment for my children that they don't have to experience the same things that I experience, but they're getting the same kind of emotional connection out of me that I got from my dad, which is completely untapped. I'm there, I'm providing, I'm giving you all these things. I'm working my butt off for you. Why are you not thankful for this? Why are you not grateful for this? It's because those aren't the things that God wants us to promise to our kids. Those are the same things that we ask God that we don't receive. We don't get the new job. We don't get the new paycheck. We don't get the new life, the new wife, the new, security. So why are we trying to work our butts off to provide those things for our children when that's not the things that our Father's trying to provide for us? He wants us to have relational depth. He wants us to have peace. He wants us to have hope. He wants us to have joy. Do your kids get joy from you, or do they get busyness from you? It's a hard pill to swallow today, and that's something I've been struggling with a lot in my family. And so sometimes this busyness is something that we just got to slow down and give the kids in our lives something so much more than being exhausted from everything that we have to do with our life. And then lastly is unforgiveness and stored offenses. Unforgiveness is an incredible thief of joy, right? Because that Grinch, right, he held on to childhood pain so tightly, it shaped his whole adult life. He was wronged as a kid, right? Kids made fun of him. Kids made him not fit in, and he held on to that for so long, and he chose not to forgive for so long. It shaped the bitterness that he had as an adult. I think about the other day I was like yelling at my kids a little bit just because of how they were behaving. And in my head, something clicked in my head. I'm like, dude, I'm going to be one of those get off my lawn kind of old guys. That's kind of where I was thinking. I was like, man, if I don't just let my kids enjoy the busyness and the bitterness and the things that I get so frustrated with, I'm going to be one of those old male Karens, I'm going to be one of those guys that just can't ever let kids play and let kids be kids, because I'm like, no, kids need to be orderly and kids need to be respectful and kids need to be whatever. And I'm like, they should, but my wife has to keep me in check and be like, well, they should also still have fun, all right? You got to let them be kids. They can't be like grown adults like you're trying to be right now. Like, you got to give them that grace and that. But I think it's because I think sometimes I'm afraid of what I grew up in, the environment that I grew up in, that if I didn't make drastic changes in my life, that my life was going to go down the same spiral of the things that I was exposed to. And I think it kind of really boils down to this unforgiveness that I had for my dad for so long, from what he did to me, that I don't want my kids to ever, I'm trying to break a cycle, and I'm afraid my kids will repeat a cycle if I don't break it with them. But I think sometimes I try to strong hand it so much, and I try to break it for them, and what I'm really doing is I'm breaking them, because I'm so focused on making sure that because of what I've built up in these stored offenses, I'm now kind of forcing it on my kids to make sure that they don't do the same thing. But in the middle of that, I'm holding on to a grudge. I'm holding on to some pain. I'm holding on to some unforgiveness, and it's infecting everything around me if I'm not careful. But God has called us to forgive. God has called us to change our hearts, because that will change how we treat and view people in the present. And it doesn't even have to be the same person, right? We need to forgive others so we don't treat others in the different way. Have you ever been in a situation with a friend or a family member and you kind of get the grunts of the drama, but it's not because you're the one who created it? Somebody else in the family or somebody else in the friends group kind of did something bad, but then it gets deflected to you, Many of you ever had a bad day at work and you come home and you take it out on your kids or your wife, right? Have you ever had a bad day at school and you come home and you take it out on your parents' kids? Like, have you ever had a situation where, somebody says something to you or wrongs you, and since you haven't had time to consider and forgive it, you choose to treat somebody else differently because of it? That's where joy can be robbed. But luckily in Scripture, we get a how and we get a why out of these two verses on what it looks like to have forgiveness, right? First, we start with the how, right? Colossians 3 says, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. That is your how. How do I forgive? Well, we forgive as the Lord forgave us. But why, Jake? Why do we need to forgive? Well, that's what Jesus says here. He says in Mark, he says, and when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive your sins. You see, the how is just like God forgave us. The why is so that God can forgive us. And it's so important for us to understand the principle of healthy forgiveness and not expecting that there's going to be reconciliation, but forgiveness is a one-way street. Sometimes people feel like forgiveness is a two-way street. Forgiveness in itself is a one-way street. It only takes one person to forgive. It takes two people to reconcile. And I think sometimes we get that mixed up and we're like, man, I don't really want to forgive this person because that means I'm going to have to sit down and have conversations and drag this out. And maybe they're not going to be willing to accept my forgiveness or accept my apology. And maybe I just know it's not going to change anything. That's not forgiveness. That's reconciliation. That takes two people that are willing. Forgiveness, though, God says, is for you and only you. Because unforgiveness is so toxic to our lives. What unforgiveness is like when you choose to hold bitterness, it's like choosing to drink poison and expecting the other person to die because of it. That's what it's like to hold on to unforgiveness. Is that bitterness? You're drinking toxins, you're drinking this poison, you're drinking things that are going to dilute your body and change you in hopes that somebody else is going to hurt because of it. Doesn't make any sense. But that's what God says happens when we choose to hold on to these offenses and we choose not to forgive, is we're drinking poison. And the reality is sometimes, isn't it crazy too, like sometimes you think about things that other people, it's just like living rent-free in somebody else's head, right? Like you see those those different ads or those different TikToks, those different videos where it's, it's so frustrating. Or, like, what's the show? The Inside Out, right? The old cartoon, right? And every once in a while, that triple dent gum, right, comes into the video, and you're like, where's this? Get out of here. Like, because it's something I remember for so long ago. But I'll tell you what, triple dent gum ain't recognizing that that's in your head all day, right? But it consumes you. And people are the same way, right? Whenever you sit here and you think all day, I'm so mad at that person. I'm so frustrated. And you're like, I want them to understand how upset I am that they did this to me. And if you had a scope into like their world, they're like sitting at home eating popcorn, like watching TV, like laughing and stuff. If you that would make it so much worse, because you're over here being like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. Like I don't want to forgive them because they've hurt me so bad, and they're sitting over here being like la-di-da-di-da. Like they don't really know or care to take that. So like if that's the image more times than not when it comes to unforgiveness, that we're sitting here thinking like we want the other person to bring themselves to us. We want the other person to see and to recognize what they've done. And there is a time and a place for that to happen, but more times than not, we get that image. If God is looking down, he sees that, and he's like, man, who's hurting more right now because of this scenario? Probably this one that's just holding it, right? That's us. Man, he needs to stop thinking about this so much. He shouldn't be letting this dominate his thoughts and his emotions anymore. He needs to let it go. He needs to forgive. He needs to stop drinking the poison in his mind and move on and forgive, but not forget. Forgive and move on with life. Because if he doesn't, he's going to stay here. Maybe this guy will one day recognize something. Maybe this guy will understand that there's something he's done wrong. Maybe one day they'll reconcile. That's my hope. But this guy cannot let this guy dictate his life, because this guy will never truly have joy or see me for who I really am. And that's where we get caught sometimes, is the idea that unforgiveness and stored offenses can ruin our joy, and we'll never see it again because we're waiting for somebody else to apologize, right? But at the end of the day, an apology is not what's going to get the joy back in your life. The change of circumstances isn't really what the joy comes from. The Grinch tried that, right? The Grinch literally stole everything, and he still didn't find the joy he was looking for. He got everything he wanted. He stole it all, but he still didn't feel any different because he was letting things on the outside dictate what he was feeling on the inside. And that's what's going to bring us to this lie that Satan wants us to believe. Because I don't know where you're at today. I don't know which one of those, 5 or 6 traits of thief stealing happens in your life. But I know at least one of them has happened to you. Because for me, I can identify at least 3 or 4 of them. These are things that happen in our lives. For you guys that, I don't know how old most of you guys are in the room. We have a different array of ages in here, and for some of you guys, there probably are more circles than others. For some people's lives and environments, there's probably more. But the reality is that God knows that Satan is sneaky. God knows that Satan is conniving. God knows that Satan steals our joy and wants us to believe that it's gone. And because of that, we believe a lie. And the lie that Satan wants us to believe because of this is he wants us to continue to try to fix the outside instead of the inside. Satan says, I've gotten in. I've made them believe that they don't have joy anymore, that it's not present in their hearts. It's not accessible to them anymore. They will always be grumpy. They will always be bitter. They'll always be upset. It'll always be a hard life for them. They're never going to be able to get back to what they thought they had in the first place. But I can try to convince them. I can trick them into thinking that maybe they can get it back. And I can do that by making them chase a pipe dream. I can make them think if they fix the outside, it will change their inside. if they continue to chase the surface worldly things, they'll finally feel peace within. And that is what the Grinch tried to do. When he lost joy, he tried to fix the outside instead of the inside. He thought, if I take the presents, if I take the decorations, if I take the noise, then my pain will stop, right? Then I will experience joy. Then I will finally be happy, right? And that's exactly how we misdiagnose our hearts. We do the same things. All I need is just a new job, right? I just need more money. I need people around me to act different and change. I need a different situation to be in. If I could just change these things, I would finally be happy. I'd finally find joy. But nothing external can fix what's internal, right? In 1 Samuel, we see that in 1 Samuel 16. It says, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. You see, in our human natures, we always look at the external. We look at the outside. We look at the things that we think we have control to fix by what we do, but the Lord is trying to diagnose the heart problem. And we are so naive to believe Satan's schemes that we are diagnosing the wrong problems. Have you guys ever taken your car into literally any dealership in the world and gotten more diagnoses than you thought you had? Right? How does that even happen? Like, for real, like when you go to like a car dealership or like a maintenance or body shop, why is it like everything in your car is like wrong? It's like your car is now like the Flintstone car. Like your car is not starting anymore. What do you mean it's not starting? I drove it here. Like how did the starter break from whenever I was driving to your shop to now in the 30 minutes that you were sitting in there? Yeah, and you got some scratch on the back of your paint. You're going to need a whole new paint job. And, you know, the window, it seems like you got one little chip in it, so you're going to need to fix the whole windshield. And you go in there like, dude, I just came in for an oil change, right? Like, why do I have like a $3,000 quote now for what my car needs? And they start sitting here, and in our heads, right, most of us are like, dude, I just need the bare bones. I just need to make sure this is street legal, right? I just need to make sure I can get to and from work. I don't care what it looks like. Right? I don't care what it, and like, well, man, I don't know, this scratch on the back of the car, you know, if you leave it unattended for too long, it's going to start rusting, and your car is going to start eating itself from the inside out, and before you know it, you're not even going to have a car anymore. You're just going to have a frame and wheels. You better take care of that now. You know, naive people are like, oh, I don't want just a car with frame and wheels. Like, it's going to be cold. Like, I need to make sure I get rid of this paint, right? And we start misdiagnosing the problems in our cars. But the same thing happens to us as human beings with our hearts. Oh man, it's this job, man, and there's some things that irritate me at this job, and you know, if I don't take care of this, like I'm gonna be stuck here for the rest of my life, and I don't want that, you know, and so like I gotta make sure I gotta make these drastic changes now. Or man, if I don't find a spouse soon, like I'm gonna be lonely for the rest of my life. I don't want that, so I need to minimize my standards and just find somebody, anybody. And you know, I don't want to live in an apartment for the rest of my life, so I'm going to take out all these loans and all these debts and just try to find a house right now and just work my way into debt because I don't want to be like, and so we start misdiagnosing the problem and trying to fix everything around us. And Satan is like, keep going. Keep going. Oh, that one didn't fix it. Try this one. And he keeps pushing the goalpost, right? Keeps pushing the goalposts. Oh, you finally found a wife. Oh, but you're still not happy. You know what you need? You need this. And he pushes the goalpost. Oh, you finally got a job. Great. Still not enough money, though? Keeps pushing the goalposts, right? Oh, you finally got kids, but they're frustrating? Well, maybe you need to put this in your life to make sure, And Satan keeps pushing and pushing and pushing the goalposts, and we keep thinking, if I got this, I'd get more happy, I'd get more happy, I'd get more joy. And Satan just controls it. And the Grinch proved it. He literally stole everything, but he was still miserable at the end of the day. And that lie will never stop in our lives. Satan will always, even after we leave today, guys, you will still be convinced if there's something else that you could change in your life, you will be happier. One sermon's not going to change that. It will identify it, and maybe it'll give us an opportunity to work on it, but it won't change it because it's the human nature of our hearts. As human beings, we can leave this building and we will still recognize there is still a life to live. There's still things in my life. There are still circumstances that I think Satan is going to push me to want to have to make me feel more joy. But this has to be a constant fight with Satan saying that's not accurate, that's not true, that won't bring anything else. It's got to be a change of mind. And that is going to take a long time. But what makes the lie become smaller and smaller and more unbelievable is when we can choose to jump into the truth, when we can choose to lean towards the truth. And that's our last point for the day, that the truth is that Jesus restores what life and Satan has stolen. See, that's the truth that it's so hard for us to see through the fog of the lie because of the thieves that steal the joy. It's almost impossible to feel like there is some sort of truth in the middle of this. That's literally our theme verse, right? John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you may live life and live it to the full. That I can restore, I can revive, I can renew. See, the story of the Grinch, the turning point wasn't when he stole Christmas. That's not when joy really came, right? It was when he encountered unexpected grace. It's when the Who's were still singing even though they didn't have anything anymore. Because it was never the problem. The things weren't what changed the Who's. It was what was going on inside. The change happens when grace confronts pain. And grace helps pain. The change for the Grinch was that when he heard that there was something different that brought joy in their life. It wasn't everything. The grace occurred when little Cindy Lou Who extended an arm of hope, gave the Grinch an opportunity for community. It was nothing internal, or it was nothing external. It was nothing around him that changed it. It was everything inside that changed that. And Jesus promises those same things. Look what David says here in Psalms. David does an incredible job because knowing David's life and knowing how David believed the thief for a while, David believed Satan for a while, and David chose to do things in his life. You know, David, he chased Bathsheba, right? And he chose to have an impure relationship with a married woman. He chooses to murder one of his best friends in Uriah. He chooses to do so many things in his life, and he has shortcomings, and he believes the thief. He believes if he just got more things, it would make him happy. It would make him more at peace. It would make him feel like he had finally could find joy again in his life. And he believed Satan for a while. And despite listening to Satan, despite leaning in on Satan, David still can have a complete change of heart and find joy again. And David writes in these Psalms, in Psalms 23, he says, "He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake." He says in Psalms 147, "The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." You see, Jesus doesn't just return what was stolen when we choose to lean to him. He provides something much better than what was stolen. God's hope for our lives through Jesus and the pain that he suffered, the life that he gave, the type of love that he provided for us is so much better than what Satan has taken from us. You know, you might think in those good old days when you had joy and you were a kid and you were happy, or, you know, in your college days and you're like, man, something's just changed. And you're like, I just wish I could get that back. And, you know, my goal today is for you to understand you shouldn't want that back. You should want what God is going to give you that's so much better than what you had in the first place. That's what you should aspire to have. Man, I thought I had joy when I was younger, but I don't have a clue of what God has in store for me. I thought something was taken from me and I want it back. God says, I don't want to give that back. I want to give you something so much better. I want to restore something within you that can be so much better than what was taken. And that is a hard concept to get to. But the hope that we get to have in Jesus because of what he provides for us can bring so much hope to our lives. It can bring so much healing to our lives. It can bring such a change of emotion to our lives. And just like the Grinch, it is crazy to see how, I wish that they make like a Grinch too, where it's like, now we get to see all the good things that the Grinch gets to live through, right? It's like they gave us like a small little snippet in the last 10 or 15 minutes of both movies. But it's like, man, why can't they showcase like the life he got to live? And I like the new movie because in the credits, it starts showing some of that, where it's like he starts building inventions for like the single mom, and he's trying to help the community do different things. Like, it's so cool that they kind of expanded on it a little bit, because it's like, it's not just about a feeling, it's about being involved in the community from there. It's about showing that joy to people around you. There's no point in getting joy if you're going to keep it to yourself, And the Grinch, once he found it, he used it. And that's my goal today, guys, is for us to identify what these joyful thieves are, but to understand that God is going to give something so much greater when we can trust in him. But also, God doesn't just want to give us joy for ourselves to make ourselves happy, but he wants to give us joy so we can make others around us happy. And there's so many people, whether you believe it or not, church, like there are people in your life that are waiting for you to find the joy of God. There's so many people in your life. It could be your family members, your siblings, your coworkers, people you don't even know yet that you might meet at lunch today, you might meet at a store today. People are waiting for you to find the joy that God promises again in your hearts. But it's going to take some time to work that out. So, with that being said, I encourage you guys to pull out that communication card, because in that communication card is an opportunity for you guys to respond today about the idea of what joy is and how it can be offered to your lives. You see, joy is not something, like I said, that's just easily gained overnight. It's not like I got it now, I'm good, Jake, I'm done, like I got my joy, check. Like this is an ongoing process, because Satan will continue to throw things at you. Satan knows how to get at us. He knows what bogs us down. He knows how to steal it, and he will continue to do that. But what Jesus can do is promise something that will make us not believe the lie as much as we used to. And that is going to take a lot of time. It's going to take community. It's going to take relationships. It's going to have to take more trust in God through his word and knowing his character. And so I don't know where you're at today, but maybe you need to know more about God. You need to know more about who Jesus is and what his word says about what he can provide in his joy. And maybe you want to indicate that you'd like a Bible study and to get to know God a little bit more. Maybe it's the community aspect of it, just like the Grinch. He was so alone. That's what I love in the movie. He was like, it wasn't Christmas I hated. It was being alone is what I hated. And maybe that's where you're at today, is just like, I don't really feel like, I've been here for weeks, I've been here for months, I've been here for years, and I still don't feel close to people. Maybe talk about joining a small group and getting involved. And maybe if you're in a small group, trying to take the initiative to pour in a little bit. I don't know where you guys are at today, but I do know that joy is something that we kind of post on walls during the Christmas season, like love, joy, peace. Like those are the things that you see around Christmas. And my goal, my hope is that our church can find true joy and not believe Satan's lies anymore. I hope that you guys will come back next week as we kind of walk through the real truth with the Grinch. But man, oh man, I just hope that, and I pray that this will be a season for joy for our whole church. Let's pray. God, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to have joy, even when we feel like it's stolen, even when we feel like it's not in us. God, you say it's always there, but we have to be able to find it. We have to be able to trust in you. We have to be able to not believe the lies anymore. And God, then and only then we'll be able to have true joy with you, and everlasting joy, and a supernatural type of joy that we cannot find on our own. And so, God, I pray that we can take your word seriously. I pray that we can identify the things that damage us and that fog that we can not believe Satan anymore, but we can trust and believe in you. We can believe in Jesus for his ultimate sacrifice on the cross, and we can lean on your people and your community to help bring that joy back to life, Lord. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.